Hello, everyone, and welcome to GCC's Georgia Chiro Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Kathy, and today we have a good friend of mine, a great chiropractor, Dr. Vanessa. How you doing today?
Hey, Dr. Kathy. Great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Listen, we're going to jump right in today because life happens, and sometimes life gets in the way. And one of the sayings that I remember hearing all through chiropractic school from Dr. Sid and from a lot of the mentors that we had was that you have to serve your way through. And when things happen and unforeseen things happen, you have to serve your way through. Have you ever heard that saying before?
Absolutely.
Have you been living something that requires you to really put that into play?
Yeah. So most recent current events would have brought me to this situation in my office and in my life where I've had to really hunker down and find that servant, humble attitude to really uh, serve my way back into my practice. Another saying I love to hear is, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah, that is the truth, isn't it? You can plan it all out, but God's not always going to follow through with what you plan. He's got bigger plans. So, can we kind of go back to last fall and have a little conversation about how your whole practice and your life and your lifestyle took a dramatic change?
Yeah, I would love to share with you guys how that all started back fall. If you want me to get right into it, I will. So a couple of people know that I had to take 3 months out of practice because last October I was in a skydiving accident. And when you have two practices and you adjust animals on the side and you're active in athletics and CrossFitting, going from 90 to nothing is a huge transition, and so that's kind of what happened to me. So when I decided to venture out into the skydiving community, I decided to people talk about the fear of the unknown, right? And so when you don't know if you can do something, you have a tendency to be afraid of it. One thing Dr. Reekman always said when we were students is don't be afraid of anything unless it can bite you, and don't be afraid to try new things, right? So I jumped out into the skydiving world, literally jumped out of a plane, and on my second jump I had a bad landing and I pretty much broke everything from the waist down. So that took me out of practice to a screeching halt. So one way that I got back into the office, though, was my patients. My patients were there for me. Staff was there for me. We had doctors coming and helping. And literally, I kind of had to work remotely, right? It's kind of weird to think about a chiropractor working remote. How
Right.
does somebody who is hands-on and in the practice all of a sudden start working remote? And so I literally got remote PC and I was logged in every day with the office and kind of seeing what they were doing. Just to see, to make sure things were moving along. But it was really frustrating. I have to be completely honest. Doing my passion and not being able to serve on a day-to-day basis. You go through some dark times when life hits you like that. And so one of my greatest joys was getting back in the office and getting back into practice. And I really owe a lot to chiropractic for that. I was up and walking in 3 months.
So take us back for a minute, because right now I'm sure there's somebody listening, and I know for myself, if you told me today I can't practice for the next 3 months, like, right, your heart stops, you can't breathe, you're like, what am I going to do? Not everybody has associates, or if we have associates, maybe they can't handle what we do, or they can't see all the patients that we see, or you have special patients that only want to see you.
Right.
That initial thought, I know, of course, your focus was on healing and getting yourself better, but I know you well enough to know that you put yourself almost second in that first thought that came through, right? Your first thought was on your patients, and then it's, how am I going to get better? So did you have an associate at the time?
No, I did not have an associate. I run 2 offices by myself 6 days a week. I literally had to call and get 2 different doctors into the office, one for each office. I called a couple local docs and they were unable to help. And so I actually have somebody who drives from Atlanta to my Madison location 3 days a week. And then I had a gal from Milledgeville come in Tuesdays and Thursdays to cover my other practice. So we had to modify hours, but we made it through. And one of my other favorite sayings of Dr. Sid's is persistence alone is omnipotent. You know, you just have to keep on keeping on and figure out a way.
Now, for the GCC members that know Dr. Brad Pizza, yes, that is her dad. And yes, I did get the call right away that he was very upset with you. And then the next conversation was, who could we get down here to her offices? And it is a challenge when you think about it. If you're running your own practice and everybody else that you know is running their own practice, it's a challenge. And I know that you went through a little bit of a challenge and you were finally able to get people that were able to help you out. But talk to us a little bit about what it took and how chiropractic got not only your life back, but it got you back to doing, you know, what it is that matters the most to you.
Yeah, my main focus was my patients. My first, like you said, my main and primary focus was making sure that the patients were taken care of. Healing was secondary, honestly. You know,
you think that was out of faith? Do you think that was out of your own faith and your belief and your like knowledge of the body, that you were like, my body's going to heal?
Yeah.
What do I have to do in the meantime?
Totally. Totally. I knew that whatever was happening internally was going to happen, right? There is no process that does not require time. So whether my butt's sitting at home in bed, or if I actually, you know me, and I'm kind of a little bit stubborn and don't always listen to doctor's orders. I was back in the office after a month, sitting at the front desk on my walker, you know, talking to the patients and giving out hugs and stickers and lollipops to the kids. I really couldn't stay out of the office. And, you know, everybody was encouraging me to sit down and go home and rest. And I just couldn't. I couldn't leave the office. And still to this day, you know, I have my moments where I'm uncomfortable. I have my moments where it hurts. But, you know, I'm just glad to be back into practice.
The closest thing I can relate this to, and I think for some of the people listening that we can relate it to, is childbirth. And there's some chiropractors who take 2, 3, 4 months off leading up to their birth, and some that take 2, 3, 4 months off afterwards, or 6 months afterwards. And not everybody does that. I know I was in labor in the office adjusting and literally having contractions, collapsing on top of someone, like putting all my weight on them, and went home, had the baby, and was back in the office. I mean, both babies, I was back in the office 4 or 5 days later adjusting.
Yeah.
And it's just the mindset that we have. And I'm not expecting everyone to do that. I'm not expecting everyone to be like Dr. Vanessa and get your butt back in the office within a month of basically shattering every bone from your waist down. But there's something about living a life of service where that's what makes you tick, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not a job to us. This is a calling. And that life of service is just something that you serve your way through because that's where you want to be. And that's where I think you did your most healing, because you were around the environment that serves your soul the best.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Kathy. You know, it's all about mindset too. A lot of people, when they get that bed rest order, they do just that. They sit home and they sit in bed, and it can really affect not only you physically, but mentally and emotionally. Being back in the office, I think, was a great way not only to be back with my patients, but it kept my heart in the practice. And it was just as rewarding for patients to see me as it was for me to see them. With the notion of childbirth and having contractions right there on top of patients. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, I hobble around patients and I use them as a little bit of a crutch just to get around the room. And they understand, and you know, they just go with it. But I'll tell you an instance of when I came back into the office a little bit too soon. The associate, Dr. Jay Driscoll, who came to help me, you know, within 3 days of calling him, he was in the office and ready to go. So I'm super thankful for a humble servant to come and help me. But he was in a car accident 1 month after he was in the office. And he called me on a Wednesday and said, hey, I just got rear-ended and I can't come in. So I was sitting in bed and I said, you know what? We closed the office that Wednesday. Friday was our half day. And I said, I can't close the office for pretty much a week, right? We were only open on a Monday. And
Uh-oh, Dr. Vanessa froze. Hopefully she's going to come right back because I know I want to hear the end of this story. All right. Well, kudos to Dr. Jay Driscoll for stepping up, jumping in, and helping out because, I know it takes a lot for people to leave their practice. It takes a lot for someone to go and help somebody else. And I know that we all talk about service, but when you actually have to put it into effect and you have to get there and do something, that is a big deal. And hopefully Dr. Vanessa is going to come unfrozen in just a second. But in the meantime, I'll kind of keep chit chatting for you. And we're going to talk about, listen, a life of service. This is what we chose. And sometimes service comes in all different shapes, comes in all different forms. It's going to look differently all the time. But you make that commitment and you find a way to make it work. And I will tell you, after having spoken with Dr. Vanessa at length, I can tell you, I hope she comes back to finish her story. But I can tell you that being in service to others was one of the things that helped her get back to where she was. And here she is, perfect timing. So I was just kind of filling some space for you. But I definitely want to finish that story about Dr. Jay Driscoll having a car accident after coming in and covering your office.
Yeah, 1 month in, he was in a car accident. I just really couldn't bear the thought of having the office closed for essentially a week. So I told my staff I was coming in and I said, whatever it is, we're going to take care of people. If I have to adjust one person and sit down for a couple minutes, that's what we're going to do. We ended up seeing, I think, 15 to 20 people in just those couple hours. And just that alone, I went home and cried. And a part of me cried because I was in a lot of pain. But the other part of me was happy tears, right? Emotionally excited to just be back in the office and putting my hands on people. And it was kind of like I could do it. It was like I proved not only to myself, but I proved to others that like nobody's keeping me down, right? I think of Rocky Balboa, like more. It was felt good. I took the week off after that, but it just felt good to prove that, I still got it. And as much as it got me down emotionally and mentally and physically, I was just happy to be back.
And tell us about your journey ever since and how are your practices doing?
They're doing good. We're doing great. I actually still have Dr. J in the office with us. We're growing the Madison office. I'm back full time at the Lake office. So we still have both offices up and running. I'm starting to adjust my dogs, but not yet the horses. I do have maybe a surgery or two down the road. So we're looking to that, but I know that God's got it and whatever is meant to be, it'll be just fine.
So for the doctors and the teams that are watching this right now that are going through a personal struggle of their own and an obstacle that they right now might be looking at, like, I don't know how I'm ever going to get over this, or maybe they've got something physical going on. Maybe it's something mental. Maybe it's with their staff. Maybe it's with their relationships, maybe with a family member. What are some closing words that you would want them to hold dear to their hearts?
Yeah, right. We all have our stuff. And that's just one of the things that I keep reminding myself is like, no matter what difficult times that we're going through, everyone has their crap. Whether it is relationships at home, whether it's kids, partners in the office, what I would encourage people to think about is you're not alone. We all have these difficult times that we go through, but great sailors were made in difficult waters, right? Like we are going to get through it. And, whatever you have going on right now, somebody else can share it with you. Just reach out and talk to people because we're all here to help each other. And that's really the biggest thing is I had a hard time asking for help. And I was put into a position where I had to ask for help and I wasn't good at it. So I'm just really thankful that when I asked, people stood up and like I said, you're not alone. We're here with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a hard one for most driven professionals, right? We didn't get to this level in our practices. We didn't get through school and get through boards and open up our own practices or, start working with somebody if we weren't a driven individual. And it is very hard to ask for help, but I second what you say. Going through everything that my children and I have gone through for the last 2.5 years, asking for help was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do. I'll take on any challenge, but asking for help was hard. But you will be amazed when you ask for help, how people will come out of the woodwork that are just so thankful for the opportunity to give back to you and serve you. So docs, if you're listening to this and you're going through something, lean on others, lean on your family, lean on your friends, lean on our colleagues, lean on someone in the profession that can understand what you're going through, or at least lend an ear or a hand or a set of hands, whatever may be needed at the time.
Absolutely. Amen. We hit the nail on the head with that.
Yes. Fantastic. I'm so glad that you had the time to come on. I know you got a busy schedule and you got to get back to it, but thank you for taking the time to come on with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm excited to see you guys soon.
Yes. And thank you for coming out to Cinco de Cairo the other night, because your story just absolutely touched all the people that were there. And it was such an inspiration having you there for the students that were there to see you, for the docs that know what's going on to see you there. It was awesome to have you there. So thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great time. It's always great to be back with my, rubbing shoulders with my favorite chiropractors. I wouldn't have wanted to go anywhere else that Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Listen, if you're watching this live, thank you for joining us. If you're watching the replay, just drop a comment down below and hopefully make plans to join us for our cornhole tournament coming up on Saturday, June 4th. That's coming up. That's always a fun time. And then, of course, we've got our golf tournament September 15th, right around chiropractic's birthday. And we've got multiple continuing ed programs all over the state. So check out our website. Check out the crawl going below the screen, and send us a message. We'll be happy to get you that information. All right. On behalf of the GCC, thanks, Dr. Vanessa.
Thanks, Dr. Kathy.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.